Our guest on the Motivation Show today is a jewelry designer, a photographer. She's a former record executive, and she's also pretty well known for having been the girlfriend of a Beatle. Yes, John Lennon's girlfriend. Welcome to the Motivation Show, May Pang.
Thank you so much, Eli. It's a good morning because I'm gonna be on here with you.
Well, I'm pretty excited about talking to you because who isn't a John Lennon fan? And I know you've got some great history there, but you've done some really interesting things yourself. And I also know that you're involved with having a photography exhibit that's going to be around the country. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, I mean, I'm excited. This is all part of to promote, also to help with my film, that the documentary that's coming out. But it's all the photos I took of John back in the day, and there's a lot that a lot of people have never seen. And I think, of course, it's up there so you can purchase it now. And it was something I held for a long time, and it was under my bed for many years, in the little storage area. And then finally, I bring it out, and I said, "Oh, what's this?" There they are. It's all these photos.
So this photography gold, as I would call it, is just sitting under the bed, right? And you're just like,
Yeah, I mean,
oh, what is this treasure trove I have here of this little unknown guy by the name of John Lennon? Well,
I didn't think about that. I just sort of threw all my stuff in, and then finally someone said, "Oh my God, what is this doing here?" I said, "I don't know. It's just stuff I've had accumulated over the years." And there's all these photos. And now I bring it out. It was in a book, and now it's for everybody to see.
well, that's terrific. Well, John was comfortable just having you take these pictures. He just was very natural when he when you were taking them.
All these pictures are not a quote posed
They're not
as
posed.
like in for journals. Not especially when he's eating. I have a series there where it's what I call soups on, where he's eating his favorite soup, which is hot and sour soup, and he looks at me, and his nose is going, and he's looking at me. He goes, "Really? Do you want this going on?" And I just kept taking photos. He didn't care. He liked the way he looked through my eyes, and that was the whole thing. He didn't like other people's photography. I mean, he liked them, but he really didn't care for them, because he said it made me look fat, or I look like this, so when he started to see some of my photos, he goes, "Let me see them." And when he saw them, he says, "I really like these." And so he let me have carte blanche, whatever I want.
So he wasn't too self-conscious then about having this photo taken. I know some celebrities may, want to only take a photo if they look a certain kind of way, and they're really, really picky about it, and they got to go to the hairdresser and primp up, so he was a little more casual, huh?
He was a little more casual. And then there's a photo in there, a photograph that I took, and it was really, we were on a short weekend holiday, and we were up in Ellenville, which is near Woodstock, and we were with friends who loaned us the house. We were taking a walk in the woods, and as we're walking, I just thought, "Oh, nature, this is gorgeous." And the colors were turning. It was the fall, and I sort of dropped back. And as I dropped back, I called out to him, and he turned. And just at that moment, I snapped the photo. Mind you, I only snapped one. Back in the day, it's not like it is now, where you go, "Oh, I don't like this. Delete, delete, and we'll do another." I had no idea what I took until it got developed.
So how did you feel when you knew that John Lennon was going to go back to Yoko Ono, to the Dakota building? How did you feel at that moment after having that relationship?
Well, here's the thing. Didn't know. It wasn't planned. It wasn't on the docket, as it were. This was just because the last words he said to me were, "Okay, when I get home, we're gonna go out to dinner wherever you want, and then we're gonna make plans to go see Paul and Linda down in New Orleans." And they were just at our house to just have a visit, and just to hang out. And they said to us, "Oh, we're gonna be down in New Orleans to do a new album," and it subsequently was called Venus and Mars. And John said, "Oh, okay, great." And then John said, "Yeah, we should go." And that really was the last thing. And we were in the middle of buying a home. We had thought about it. We looked at this house that we want out in Montauk. So there was a whole lot of things. To say that I knew he was going back, no, I don't think he knew he was going back either. So there.
Well, I'm a huge Beatles fan, and there are some people who try to convince me, as a younger generation, that this K-pop is more popular than the Beatles ever were. I'm like, I don't know about that. And I
Mm,
am absolutely astounded at the work that John Lennon did. Of course, the other Beatles as well. It's hard to believe in like 7 years they put out the kind of legacy and the scope of music that they did is just absolutely extraordinary. I mean, there are bands out there for 40, 50 years that can't match, what the Beatles did in even 1 year. So that's pretty extraordinary. Now, of course, John had reputation in many different ways. Some people might have thought he was a little bit surly. Was he? What was he like?
he was really very easygoing. It depends on, I guess, the company you keep. We had a very easy life in that sense of that anybody who came to the house, I'll give you a perfect example. We just moved into this apartment in the city, and the doorbell rings, and downstairs the doorman's ringing. I'm going, who could it be? We just got here. We didn't even tell anybody what address. I mean, we barely knew our own address. So I'm going, this is interesting. So he answers the call, and then he goes, oh my God. And I said, what? Who is it? And he goes, it's Paul and Linda. And I'm standing going, Paul and Linda, how did they find out where we lived already? And then all of a sudden he was like, what do you think? I said, send them up. They're your friends. He goes, are you okay with it? I said, there's nothing to be okay about. And I said, just go right ahead. Just do it.
Was that the Upper East Side of Manhattan?
It was not the Upper East Side. It was actually like in the 50s, 52nd Street on the East Side. And we faced the river, which John loved. There was a lot of
The Hudson.
you could see no, we were on the East Side, the East River.
Oh, the East River. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So it was great. So he'd get to see the boats go by. He was, that was home for him, Liverpool with the Mersey and all that, so he loved it out there. And summertime, he just sat out there all the time. He just loved seeing the lights and everything that was going on.
So how did it all begin? How did you actually get to meet John Lennon?
Well, to meet John Lennon was interesting. I met both John and Yoko I worked at Alan Klein's office that handled all of the Apple records. So that was their new client. So I was part of the whole thing. And I didn't have a job. I went up to the office and I said, is there a job opening? They said, no. And then all of a sudden, these people came out and this woman said, she's looking for a job. And the guy goes, come back after lunch. And I went in there and I just had an interview. And he goes, can you work next week? I said, sure. I was in the business.
So John, of course, wrote Imagine, one of the greatest songs ever written, and that really resounds, I think, in any decade or any era. What is your fondest memories of John?
Oh, there's a lot of that. But I probably, one of the biggest is probably when we started to sort of see each other. He called me into his office and he says, I got something to show you. And I said, oh no. Okay. So I walked in and said, he goes, sit down right here. And I said, why? He goes, just sit down. Don't say anything. He picked up his guitar and he goes, I wrote this last night. And it was a verse to a song called Surprise, Surprise, Sweet Bird of Paradox. And that was written for me, which I didn't even know what to say. I mean, let alone, somebody's going to write a song for me and it's John Lennon. That was amazing for me. And then later on, when he did a song called Number 9 Dream, he wrote the song. And then one day he said, we're at the studio recording. And he said, listen, one of the assistants came running in. John needs you right now. And I'm going, okay, what does he want? And I go running in. I said, what is it? And then he says, out there. And he points to a microphone and a headset out in the studio. And I'm going, what am I doing out there? And he goes, I need you to do something. So in the end, it's he wanted me to softly whisper his name. And that's on the record of Number 9 Dream.
Oh, wow.
And we sing background as well with 2 other people. So we were called the 44th Street Ferry when we were doing the background vocals. Yes, but those are my vocals, my voice sing. John.
Wow. So you, of course, were John Lennon's former girlfriend, and He's pretty famous, to say the least.
I think
And
so.
that kind of gives you a little bit of fame. You're a very down-to-earth person. You know, I talk to a lot of famous people, but they're not quite as charming and as down-to-earth as you are. And I'm not just saying that to apple polish you, but before we even got on the air here, you know, you're pretty easy to talk to. Tell me about your philosophy of life and why you're such an easy person to get along with here.
First off, I like people. I always, that it's everybody. Everybody has their own opinions. Everybody has their own way of life. But what it is that I love people and I wanted to know them. I was a loner in school, and it's taken me years to come out of my own shell. And I discovered how many people that we have a lot of things in common, or I learned a lot from other people, and I enjoy talking to them and getting to know them. And, it's true. I mean, a lot of my friends all know me. They go, "Oh, just tell me." And I like to remember things of stupid things, and I just remember, and they'll go, "Oh, ask May. She knows it all." And I'm much more open, and I think everybody is different, and I just want to know. I like when I like to go to Europe, and I like to travel, and I like to see what goes on in their lives, and it's so different from what we have in New York City, which, you go to Italy or France. I mean, I enjoy that you can fly almost anywhere in Europe within a couple of hours. Here, it would take us a long time to get anywhere. But I like the idea of learning their history as well.
How did you handle that unfortunate, fateful day of December of 1980?
Ooh, that was tough. Handling it was, I don't know if I would even say I've handled it even to this day. It's just been so long. It's, that it's happened. But I remember when I heard it on the radio, when it was still radio, I ran home. I was at a friend's house on the West Side. And I remember getting into the taxi and said, "Just don't go by 72nd Street, please, and just keep going." And he hadn't heard yet, that John had been shot. I came home and the phone was ringing, and I picked it up, and it was Joan, who was at that time Ringo's executive secretary, and she's going, give me the phone number of the hospital." And I said, "It's too late, he's gone." And I just remember her screaming at me going, "What's wrong with your bloody country? I've got to go now. I got to tell everybody." So that was that. And then I remember taking a walk a couple of days later. I was always in just sort of hiding. I was walking with friends so they couldn't see that who I was. And I just wanted to just walk in and see all the people that were showing the love for John and remembrance. And you could see people just sobbing everywhere. I never heard the city be that quiet, ever.
Yeah, I was there actually the next day at the vigil. I
Yeah.
was running the 1980 New York City Marathon, training very hard for that. And then I heard the news, and I just went there across from the Dakota, and it was a mob scene, and everybody was, yeah, of course, singing all the songs. And it was a tough day, certainly for all. I mean, his work will live forever, and I listen to it still all the time. So tell us about this exciting documentary, and tell us what it's the
Ooh.
name of the documentary. How did it happen, and where can
Oh,
people
the documentary,
hear it and see it?
this year is 50 years since my whole relationship with John started. This is 50 years. I can't even believe that as I'm saying it.
2023, because that's when we're doing it right now. We're
Yeah.
April 2023 for
Yep.
perspective for those that'll be hearing this in 10 years from now.
So it's kind of an interesting thing. But my movie, it's called a lost weekend, a love story. Um, our time period's been known as the Lost Weekend. Everybody thought, "Oh, John is drunk, it's this," and everybody started telling me about my life, and I got a little tired of it. I mean, I spent all these years where people are saying, "Oh, you keep saying it, but I know everything about you," but they don't. So when so a few years, about 6 years ago, this started about 6 years ago. 6 years ago, Eve Branstein, who was one of the co-producers and directors, said, I was talking to her, and she's a good old friend of mine, and we were saying, I said, "What are you doing now?" And she goes, "Oh, I'm directing, I'm doing this, and I'm doing documentaries." And I just swung around and I looked at her and I said, "That's what I want to do." Just like that. I had no idea why. I had no, I didn't know what she was doing. And she goes, "Are you sure?" I said, "Yeah, it's time. I could feel it in my bones that this is the time." And then she got two other people on board, which was Richard Kaufman and Stuart Samuels, who had just come off of doing the movie, the Ron Howard movie, the Beatles, the touring years. So he was the archivist in the group. And so, and Richard is the cinematographer and understanding the filming of everything. So we've spent all this time just making this movie and putting it together, and they did a fabulous job. And it's to tell the story of that time period. I can't tell you how many fans and people I've known, they say it's about time. And some of them who have seen it and were lucky enough to see it have said, oh my God, I didn't know. I thought I knew everything about you. I don't know anything. It's nothing what I thought. I said, I know, and that's the reason.
Well, without giving us the plot, without giving that away, can you tell us what you think we'll take away from the film after we see it?
I think you'll find a lot of interesting things that happen between John and myself, and that I was just not a weekend, because I've seen a lot of fans have written, that's why is she writing? She was only with him for a weekend. I think they'll be surprised.
Interesting. So do you have a relationship now with Paul and Ringo?
Not really. I haven't seen them in a while. I think the last time I saw Paul was at his concert at the Barclays Center back about 7 years ago. I just can't remember. It's about that time. That was the last time I saw him. Ringo, I think I saw him briefly for a split second to say hello in London, and we were all backstage to wish Jerry Lee Lewis happy 85th. There was a lot of people, so it wasn't like a place to start talking or anything. So it was just one of those.
As another great one, Jerry Lee Lewis, I think.
Exactly.
Oh, boy, could he play the piano?
You think? Oh, John and I went to see him, and it was like John got down on his hands and knees and kissed his boots, and I'm like staring at John going, oh my goodness. So he goes, the king, and he's just on his hands and knees.
Well, for his era, in the 50s, to have done what he did, he's way, way ahead of his time. Absolutely extraordinary performer.
Yes,
for sure. So, so you do a lot of other stuff, this photography, the jewelry designing, you're a record executive.
My feng shui thing, it's like
feng shui.
Yeah, it is. I mean, you think about it, my girlfriend who lives down in Florida was wearing one of my pieces here, and she said, I can't believe it. She goes, I've been stopped a couple of times now. People ask me, where can I get this? So, I mean, she actually, I think, took it off her neck and sold it to somebody because she said they wanted it so badly.
Yeah, and so you tell us a little bit more about the, the documentary and then the film that you're doing, because I think a lot of people are obviously going to want to see it. I'm going to go want to see it, and after it's playing, it's around here this year. I mean, is there a way that people are going to be able to easily see this after that, like on Netflix or something?
I have no idea, and hopefully it will. I just don't know, because we haven't gotten past the step of let's show it in the theaters. So that's where we are at this moment. I hope so. And I would love for everybody to see it, because I've been getting a lot of people from all over the, globe, like, in Brazil and Peru and Japan and Australia and of course England. So I hope so. It is an amazing little piece, and I credit my mother actually for a lot of this, because she was the one who had all the great, she had the strength, and she would say to me, it's your turn, you got to go out, you can speak English, go do it. She was raised in China. I was the firstborn in America on either side of my family. So this is a good thing. I pay homage to my mother for this. It's her.
So being seated in a seat of fame that you are, and kind of being connected to, of course, one of the world's most famous people, he'll be famous forever. I'm sure you've got your people who are very supportive of you, and I'm sure you've got, just like anybody else, people who will talk about some controversial things. How do you handle a controversy?
You just either, if it's too controversial, you just don't, what else can you say? There's not really much. But if it's something, you just have to be honest. Everything I've ever said, I think a lot of the fans have known I've not changed my story. I've had people actually, a lot of the Beatle podcasters have said that to me just recently. They said, I interviewed you back at 20 years ago. You said it then, you're saying the same thing now. It's great because it hasn't changed, and I haven't changed my story. But now it's opening to a wider audience that I couldn't reach from, in 20 years. Look at all the changes we have. Social media, this computer stuff. We keep forgetting, and cell phones, which sometimes I just want to throw out the window because I hear it all the time. And I want some peace and quiet. It's all there.
Curious. Do you have any regrets in life? Do you have any regrets on the John Lennon relationship and how that all started and panned out?
No, I don't have any regrets. You can't have regrets. I mean, we go through life and certain things happen, and you can only say, what if? But I don't know what ifs. You just have to take it. And I ran with what I had when there were times that I'm thinking, what could I do with John when he was going through this, or he was upset? What can I say to him? Or, and things like that. But it was okay. I did what I did at the time. You can't have that many regrets. If you do, boy, think about all these people that said, I have this regret and that regret. I finally, when it was my mother, she had just turned 97, and she had said, and I thought, oh, I'll wait till she's 100 and I'll give her a party. And then I sat there for a minute and I said, I don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. I think I'm going to do something right now. And I organized a little gathering for her. And it was so sweet because it was only a few months later that she did pass away. So you can't have regret. You got to think what you could do now. Don't go crazy, but you got something. You got to do it.
I love that philosophy. So I bet you if my next question was Googled, you'd probably find like 50 billion times it's been asked this question. And that is, how did the Beatles and why did the Beatles actually break up in 1970?
Only from observation, because I wasn't really there when they were, quote, breaking up. I can only think of the observation of there are 4 guys, 4 thinkers, 4 different brains, and each one is different. They're not set. So everybody got tired, I think, and they needed to move on from that moment. They were together all the time. I think it's like how you see brothers arguing. They go, oh, I've had it. I want, they slam the door and they go off somewhere. And it's the same thing with them. I know that with John that he had enough time. We talked about it. He thought about, that's why he thought about writing. He asked me, he said, and this is after the dissolution of the agreement of the Beatles breaking up. And they had signed, and I took the only photograph while they're, John signing it as the last signature. And I remember we were at home, and he goes, he's just strumming on the guitar, and he turns around and he goes, I got to ask you something. And I say, yeah, and I'm waving and say, because I'm busy doing something. And he goes, what do you think if I wrote with Paul again?
Oh.
And at that moment, I swung my head around. There's, it's like The Exorcist. You swing your head around. I said, what do you mean? And I said, he goes, I think it'd be great. And he said, and then he goes, well, why? Then he went into the wide mode. And I said, listen, you and Paul writing, nobody can beat that. Solo is good, but together you had magic. And that was really, and he just sort of sat there and he went, yeah, we were good, aren't we?
Oh my God. I lament and I think about how many other great songs the Beatles could have come out with if John and Paul continued to write. Oh my God.
And I knew that was it was that close, because for him to ask me, and I'm waving him off like, what do you want now? It's too early in the morning. But he wanted to know. And I just said, I think it'd be a great idea. And Paul and Linda had just come over to our place and said, we'll be down in New Orleans. Why don't you guys come down? I knew. If I could have gotten him there, it would have happened.
So it was close, huh?
It was close.
Wow. That would have changed a lot of things.
Wouldn't it? Yes.
You would have had a lot more songs to sing.
So would everybody else.
Oh my goodness. Yes. So tell us what's in store in the next 5-10 years for May Pang.
Well, I'm just glad that both my kids are now in their 30s and I don't have to worry about them. I think right now it's me being me and doing what I want. I mean, I don't know. I'm right now I'm doing the exhibition. That's after the movie, the exhibition. Those are the two things at this moment. What else is in store? We're hoping that the exhibition will take off and maybe something else. I would love to do, I was saying to you earlier, I said, I really should have a show and start talking about all the different things that did happen back then, or go around and I made a pilot of something a while ago, and people said, why didn't you do it? Continued. I paid my own money, and it was a lot of money, but it was all about rock and roll. And I remember showing it to all the executives, and they thought I didn't know all this was happening. And these were record executives. But was one guy, and he said he saw it and he goes, who cares about classic rock? And I thought to myself, you're missing the boat. Because now we've lost a lot of great people, like we would talk Fats Domino, Chuck Berry, and I would have had them. And I want to grab people from back then that influenced me, influenced John, influenced a lot of people. And even, now we are the influencer to other people of a different generation. You talk about K-pop. My daughter went through that, so I understand it.
Yeah.
The K-pop, but they're wrong. They were big. They don't really write their own songs. They have to be like in groups. They're not even just the Beatles can write, the Beatles can play, and they changed the generation. What they thought, we all went for it. How they dressed, we went for it.
The Beatles boots, the hair,
everything. And
yeah.
they changed the
Changed
full
culture.
generation.
Yeah.
That was the whole thing. In every country, changed the generation.
Absolutely. So so I'm excited. I can't wait again to see your photography, see your film. Tell us how people can stay in touch with you, and how do they follow you and your great work?
Well, you know what? I'm on the social media, and I'm still learning, believe me. It's not so easy. So I'm on Facebook. I'm also on Instagram, LinkedIn. What else is there? Instagram, Twitter. I even joined TikTok recently, so I'm still learning the ropes on that. But they can also go to my website, maypang.com. I'll make it easy for everyone, and they can find me. Most people in the end do find me, so I'm out.
Sounds like you're pretty easy to find. You're not hiding anywhere.
Not hiding.
Anything else you'd like to add to and have our audience learn about you?
I do hope that people they can go buy tickets right now for the movie, and it'll be around for a while. The Lost Lennon, sorry, here I am. The Lost Weekend tickets.com, and it's, and people can go and check out to see where it is playing.
Well, thank you so much. You've been a delight, and I really appreciate you coming on our show today, May.
Oh, listen, I'm having a great time talking to you, because you're in a good spot where I know a lot of friends down there, so it's great.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye.